Welcome to Value Plays Only, where Badger Mole Cub is just played for the art. Today, we have Nick from the Top Deckers, playing Talion, the Kindly Lord. This is a hard control deck. It looks to grind down opponents and drown them in card advantage, winning with Thassa's Oracle. His hand contains a Rhystic Study, Chain of Vapor, Vampiric Tutor, Diabolic Intent, Praetor's Grasp, Lotus Petal, and Ancient Tomb. Tyler is playing Dargo the Shipwrecker and Tymna the Weaver. This deck looks to loop Dargo with Relic Legends or Burgi and a Sacrifice outlet, or it can win with Underworld Breach. His hand contains a Prized Statue, Pyre of Heroes, Goblin Engineer, Vampiric Tutor, Bloodstained Mire, and Ancient Tomb. His Luna Mulligan is a Red Flame. John is playing Vivi Ornitier. This deck looks to storm off with Curiosity style effects, winning with Underworld Breach. His hand contains a Mystical Tutor, an Offer You Can't Refuse, Lion's Eye Diamond, Arid Mesa, and Misty Rainforest. His Luna Mulligans are Dramatic Reversal and City of Traders. Dan is playing Etali, Primal Conqueror. This deck wins by casting Etali early and often. He can win with Food Chain or any of his opponent's win conditions. His hand contains Earthcraft, Imperial Recruiter, Twin Flame, Lotus Petal, Shifting Woodland, Misty Rainforest, and Gemstone Caverns. And with that, let's see some value plays. Dan has a pregame action, putting Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Earthcraft. Nick then starts things off with an Ancient Tomb as land for turn. He casts a Lotus Petal. He casts a turn 1 Rhystic Study. The tables strap in as they all reevaluate the kind of mulligans they kept. Nick then passes the turn. Tyler plays an Ancient Tomb of his own as land for turn. He casts a Prized Statue. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. It enters and triggers to make a treasure. Tyler then passes the turn. John untaps and apologizes in advance for his turn. He plays a Misty Rainforest as land for turn. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up a Volcanic Island. John casts Lion's Eye Diamond. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. John holds priority and casts an Offer You Can't Refuse on his own LED. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. LED is countered and John makes 2 treasures. He then passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays a Misty Rainforest as land for turn. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up a Taiga. He casts a Lotus Petal. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. Dan taps out to cast an Imperial Recruiter. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. Recruiter resolves and triggers. Dan searches up a Sticker Goblin to hand and then passes the turn. Nick untaps and draws. He plays an Exotic Orchard as land for turn. He opts to just pass the turn. In its end step, Tyler casts Vampiric Tutor. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. Vamp Tutor resolves and Tyler shows the table he's searching up an Esper Sentinel to the top of his library, losing 2 life. Nick discards the hand size and the turn then moves to Tyler. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays a Bloodstained Mire as land for turn. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up a Plateau. He casts an Esper Sentinel. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. He takes 2 to cast Pyre of Heroes. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. Tyler then passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He plays an Arid Mesa as land for turn. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up a Steam Vents into play untap, paying 2 life. He casts his commander, Vivi Ornitier. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. Vivi resolves and John passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays a Shifting Woodland as land for turn. He casts Sticker Goblin. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. Goblin enters and triggers, adding the Unsanctioned name sticker, adding 5 red mana. He spends 2 on a Twin Flame, targeting Unsanctioned Goblin. Rhystic and Esper trigger, and Tyler and Nick draw. Twin Flame resolves and creates a new Sticker Goblin, adding the Gelatinous sticker, adding 5 more mana. Dan then casts his commander, Etali, Primal Conqueror. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. In response, Nick casts Delay, targeting Etali. Esper triggers and he pays. Delay counters Etali, and Dan opts to put it in the command zone. Dan then spends his last mana on a gamble. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. Dan searches up a card to hand, and then discards Talisman of Impulse. Totally blown out and with nothing left to his plan, Dan passes the turn. Nick untaps and draws. He plays a City Brass as land for turn. He casts a Snapback, exiling Limdul's Vault as an additional cost, targeting Vivi. John responds with a Fierce Guardianship. Vivi, Rhystic, and Esper trigger. Tyler and Nick draw, and Vivi gets a counter and deals 1 to each opponent. Fierce then counters Snapback. Looking over at the board, Nick doesn't like tapping out for his commander. He opts to hold up mana and pass the turn, discarding to hand size. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays Command Tower as land for turn. Tyler casts Tataru Taru. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. It enters and triggers, targeting Dan. Dan and Tyler draw, and Tataru triggers to make a tap treasure. He then casts Mana Vault. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. Mana Vault resolves, and Tyler passes the turn. John untaps, and in his upkeep, he casts Mystical Tutor. Vivi, Rhystic, and Esper trigger. Tyler and Nick draw, and Vivi gets a counter and deals 1 to each opponent. Tataru Taru triggers to make a tap treasure. After some cryptic words from Nick, Mystical Tutor resolves. John goes searching while looking at the 10-card hand from the control deck with 4 open mana. Knowing he probably can't go for the ultimate value, John searches up a Gitaxian Probe to the top of his library. John draws for turn. He pays 2 life to cast Gitaxian Probe, targeting Nick. Vivi and Rhystic trigger. Nick draws, and Vivi gets a counter and deals 1 to each opponent. Git Probe resolves, and John looks at Nick's hand full of the most wild interaction Dimir offers. He then draws a card. John plays an island as land for turn. He casts Light Up the Stage for its spectacle cost. Vivi and Rhystic trigger. Nick draws, and then Vivi gets a counter and deals 1 to each opponent. John exiles City of Traders and Cyclonic Rift off the top of his library. Hellbent and totally out of gas, John has to pass the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays an Ancient Tomb as land for turn. He takes 2 to cast Treasonous Ogre. Rhystic triggers, and in response, Nick casts Vampiric Tutor. Esper triggers and Tyler draws. Vamp Tutor resolves, and Nick searches up a card at the top of his library and loses 2 life. Dan then opts not to pay, and Nick draws. Tartar triggers to make a tap treasure. Treasonous Ogre then resolves. Dan pays 24 life to cast his commander, Etali, Primal Conqueror. Rhystic triggers and Nick draws. In response, Nick casts Mystic Reflection, targeting Esper Sentinel. The table will give this a read, and then it resolves. Etali enters as a copy of Esper Sentinel, and nothing triggers. Dan, full of sadness, for the second turn in a row, has to pass the turn. Nick untaps and draws. He plays a Misty Rainforest as land for turn. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up an Underground Sea. He then casts Thassa's Oracle. John begs Tyler to help, as the only one of them with a hand. Tyler says they're all good and passes priority. Thassa's Oracle resolves and triggers. Nick holds priority and casts Tainted Pact, 2 Esper's trigger. Dan draws and Nick pays for Tyler's. John looks again at Tyler, and he passes priority again. Tainted Pact resolves, and Nick exiles most of his library, eyeing Tyler suspiciously, and leaves 1 card remaining in his library. Taking this opportunity, John casts Cyclonic Rift, targeting Thassa's Oracle. Vivi, Esper, Rhystic, and Esper trigger. Tyler draws, Nick declines his draw, and Dan draws. Vivi gets a counter and pings everyone for 1. With that, Cyclonic Rift resolves, bouncing Thassa's Oracle to hand. Thassa's Oracle's ability then resolves, and with 1 card in library and 1 Devotion to Blue from his Rhystic Study, Nick wins the game. Today, we have a 2-for-1 deal. In this game, Tyler is again playing Dargo the Shipwrecker and Tymna the Weaver. His hand contains an Esper Sentinel, Static Prison, Goblin Engineer, Ultra the Wretched, Blood Crypt, Exotic Orchard, and Cavernous Souls. Cammy is playing Kinnan, Bond of Prodigy. This deck looks to make infinite mana and filter it into Kinnan, putting out huge threats along the way. Her hand contains a Land of War Elves, Mockingbird, Chrome Mox, Grim Monolith, the One Ring, Force of Negation, and Windswept Heath. John is playing Rograkh, son of Rograkh and Silas Wren, Secret Adept. This is the fastest deck in the format. It uses Rograkh to its highest potential, blazing out Grixis flavored winds as early as turn 1 or 2. His hand contains a Chrome Mox, Springleaf Drum, Wishclaw Talisman, Flusterstorm, Final Fortune, and Arid Mesa. His Luna Mulligan is a Demonic Council. Dan is again playing Etali, Primal Conqueror. His hand contains a Tinderwall, Wheel of Fortune, Rionia Fire Dancer, Ancient Tomb, Gaia's Cradle, and City Brass. His Luna Mulligan is a Red Elemental Blast. And with that, let's see some value plays. Tyler starts things off with a Cavernous Souls, naming Human as it enters. He casts an uncounterable Esper Sentinel, as he holds up a middle finger to all the metal missteps he just knows are out there. Tyler passes the turn. Cammy plays a Windswept Heath as land for turn. She pays a life and cracks it, fetching up a Tropical Island. She casts a Chrome Mox. Esper triggers and Tyler draws. She imprints a Force of Negation as it enters. Cammy casts a Mockingbird with X equals 0. It enters as a copy of Esper Sentinel. Cammy then casts a Land of War Elves. She then passes the turn. John plays an Arid Mesa as land for turn. He casts a Chrome Mox. Both Esper's trigger and Tyler and Cammy draw. In response to Chrome Mox, John pays a life and cracks Arid Mesa, fetching up a Badlands. Chrome Mox then resolves, imprinting a Flusterstorm. John casts a Springleaf Drum. He casts his commander, Rograkh, son of Rograkh. He taps out to cast a Wishclaw Talisman. It enters with 3 counters, and John passes the turn. Dan plays a City Brass as land for turn. He takes 1 to cast Tinderwall. Dan passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays an Exotic Orchard as land for turn. He casts a Greedy Freebooter. He then passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She casts her commander, Kinnan, Bond of Prodigy. She casts a Talisman of Creativity. Esper triggers and Tyler draws. She casts a Grim Monolith. It resolves and Cammy is determined to be the turbo deck and casts the One Ring. It enters and triggers to gain protection. Cammy taps the One Ring to draw a card. She goes to combat and swings Esper at John. He takes the damage and Cammy passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He plays a Mana Confluence as land for turn. John activates Wishclaw Talisman, searching up a card to hand and giving Wishclaw to Dan. He then casts Necropotence. Both Esper's trigger and Cammy and Tyler draw. Much to John's surprise, Necro resolves. John pays 10 life into Necro to exile 10 cards face down. He moves to his end step and Necro triggers to add the exiled cards to hand. John discards down hand size, exiling the discarded cards. Dan untaps and draws. He plays an Ancient Tomb as land for turn. He sacrifices Tinderwall to help cast Treasonous Ogre. The tables stand to attention. Priority passes around and Cammy responds with a Force of Will, paying a life and exiling Colossal Sky Turtle as an alternate cost. Esper triggers and Tyler draws. Over the protests of Dan, Treasonous Ogre is countered. Dan then debates where to go from here. He decides he needs help against John and activates Wishclaw Talisman. Cammy says she'll use it to get interaction for John, and Dan agrees. He searches up a card to hand and then gives control of Wishclaw to Cammy. Dan passes the turn. In his end step, Tyler casts a Vampiric Tutor. Esper triggers and Cammy draws. He then searches up a card at the top of his library and loses 2 life. The turn then moves to Tyler. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays a Godless Shrine as land for turn. Into play on tap, paying 2 life. He casts a Static Prison. Esper triggers and Cammy draws. Static Prison enters and triggers targeting Necropotence. In response, John pays 16 life into Necro to exile 16 cards for his next end step. Necropotence is then exiled. Tyler goes to combat and swings Freebooter and Esper at John. John takes 2, and then Tyler passes the turn. Cammy taps in and her upkeep, the One Ring deals 1 to her. She plays a Breeding Pool as land for turn, into play on tap, paying 2 life. She activates the One Ring to draw 2 cards. Cammy casts Consecrated Sphinx. The table all stand up straight as Con Sphinx resolves. Cammy spends 1 to activate Wishclaw Talisman, searching up a card to hand and giving Wishclaw to Dan. Cammy goes to combat, swinging Kinnan and Esper at John. He takes the damage, and Cammy passes the turn. John untaps and draws. Con Sphinx triggers to draw 2. John casts a Mana Vault. 2 Espers trigger. Cammy draws, then Tyler draws. Con Sphinx triggers to draw 2. John plays Phyrexian Towers, land for turn. He moves to his end step and triggers Necro to add 16 cards to hand. John casts Valley Floodcaller. Cammy casts Pact of Negation on Floodcaller. Esper triggers. John holds priority and casts Deflecting Swat. Cammy casts Flusterstorm, with all copies targeting Deflecting Swat. Deflecting Swat is countered, and then John casts Fierce Guardianship. Tyler responds with a Silence. Esper triggers and John holds priority and casts Final Fortune. Final Fortune resolves, and then Cammy draws, Silence resolves, locking out opponents of casting spells this turn. Fierce counters Pact. Tyler draws, Con Sphinx triggers to draw 2, and then Valley Floodcaller finally resolves. John, locked out under Silence, passes his turn, discarding down to hand size. John moves to his Final Fortune turn. He untaps and in his draw step, Mana Vault deals 1 to him. Con Sphinx triggers to draw 2. John plays Ancient Tomb as land for turn. He then casts Defense Grid. 2 Espers trigger, and Cammy and Tyler draw. Con Sphinx triggers to draw 2. Priority passes around, and Defense Grid resolves. With no mana free, John starts going off now. He sacrifices Rograkh to Phyrexian Tower for 2 black mana. He casts Cabal Ritual, adding 5 black. He then casts Underworld Breach. It resolves and John puts a Demonic Tutor on the stack. He searches up a card to hand, and then he escapes Cabal Ritual from his grave, making 5 more black mana. John then casts Brain Freeze, with all copies targeting himself, milling 18 cards. He escapes Lotus Petal and cracks it for a blue mana. He recasts Brain Freeze from his grave. John presents a loop of casting Lotus Petal and Brain Freeze over and over, milling out the rest of his library. He then escapes Thassa's Oracle. With no library, Thassa's Oracle enters and triggers, and with that, John wins the game. So, what do we learn today? Just because a control deck has boatloads of cards doesn't mean they have all the answers. Sometimes you just need to make them have it. If you have any tips for the video, leave them below. Subscribe if you feel like it. Until next time, keep making value plays. You're not first, he is.
Yeah. He's.
Oh, sorry.
No,
It was a pregame.
Pregame.
I was like, hey, wait, I'm not fourth. Hang on a minute. Wait a minute. Man has turn 1 Ristic and 10 in hand, and you're talking, let's beat up John, who mulled to 5 and countered his own card.
Ooh. Blow him the hell out.
No. I just let him 1 flip.
No.
You want 1 flip?
No,
that's
that's
how
not-
it happens. That's how it happens.
Listen, they let you. Let's see what's on top.
I'm getting Gataxian Probe.
Oh,
Like, I'm just going to learn what's over there, right? I think that's the most important thing.
That's a good move.
Dan, I have 1 other card in hand. It's not that good.
Great move.
Oh my god. Oh, he plays such good cards. He's incredible. Wow, dude. I'm like...
Any names you want to share?
Yeah, Jesus. John.
fucked. I will say he could be jamming right here.
Maybe.
He did have a Tainted Pact.
Okay, you could have said any of that.
Well, now he vamped tutored. He could have the other piece. I think he already had the Mystic Reflection, which I thought was nuts.
That man up.
Yep, here we go.
John, you psycho.
You're gonna give it back, right?
I don't know about that.
You're gonna give it back when you give it.
Side.
You're not gonna give it to them, right?
He's
Dude,
wrong.
If you don't take that, I'm giving it to them.
I can't promise.
Now, who's gonna give it back?
I can't promise
I'll give it
it.
back.
No, Cammy, don't.
Cammy, you cannot give it back to Rogside.
I'll give it to Dan. Fuck you.
That's what I'm saying.
Who would
man.
not use it? Anyone?
I don't know if I'm planning on using it.
All right, great.
I'm lying.
He's learning.
I'm lying. Yeah,
I genuinely don't think I would use it, and I would give it back.
I thought
Because I think I would
1,020%.
Neck Pone's on the stack. Man, only keeping 7 of these? These cards are awesome. These cards are fucking tight.
Okay.
Is that bad? I mean,
It's horrible.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna cast
How could...
Etali probably.
He's gonna cast Etali. He'll search for whatever he wants.
He just sculpted a hand.
He
of 10
just sculpted
cards.
a hand, and he pitched mnemonic, which normally.
I won't win on my next turn.
Shake.
Final Fortune.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
No.
No Final Fortune
No.
turns either. That's gotta be part of it.
Look, I won't win on my next turn. I'm gonna cast a lot of spells for Esper.
That's not how that works.
One spell?
Cammy, no, stop. Don't listen.
Jimmy, you gotta stop who's in front of
Do
you.
it.
Remember when I did that to Tyler?
I'm not about to win. That's not how this
He
works.
fucking...
You don't know.
Dude,
Is the
he
thing.
will.
don't know.
With Etali and a wish claw, he will win.
Yeah, dude.
He can literally get food chain. He can't fizzle.
I don't know if it's in this deck. No, I'm just
You!
kidding.
He lied.
Okay, it's countered.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know what to do with Wishclaw.
You're saying no. I want one
I
of you to
want
search your
someone
deck.
to get a piece of interaction for you, and Kemi just said she would do that.
I would get interaction.
For me.
For John.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, that's probably better than
That's
me.
a better deal. I'll take the 1 damage.
The interaction is Basalt Monolith. Will get her everything from the deck.
That's not what I'm
The,
talking
the interaction
Don't
is
be
I win
roundabout.
the game.
Hold on.
No, I will get interaction for John.
All right.
Okay.
Bunch of bitches over there. Just let me have it.
Welcome to my life. Dude, every game.
That is
I
good.
will mill out my deck and then I'll cast Thassa's Oracle.
Nice.
Yay.